Democracy gives everyone the rights of expression, a passage to a world of freedom, a world that is free, that is fair, equitable, and that is just. But indeed, how just, fair, and equitable is democracy to the people? How economically free are the people in a world of globalization? Join the discussion, have your say here, live on Ben Television on News Punch. Join us on the program today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. This is Voice, where we'll bring to you legal information you need to have here in the United Kingdom. And the kind of information we give you ranges from immigration law, property law, all kinds of legal information that will help you to stay, live, integrate, make money in the United Kingdom. My name is Tunde Alabi. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program today. Today on the show, we're looking at your rights and obligations as immigrants in the United Kingdom, or even as employers, as landlords, or whatever capacity you may be. What are your rights as citizens, and what are your obligations? What are the things you should do? What are the things you should not do? These are the things we'll be taking. We cannot actually indeed cover all the rights and obligations of citizens in one single 25-minute program. But some of the things we'll be touching on the program today are essential information you do need to have to live within the scope of the law here in the United Kingdom. Welcome to the program. On the show today, as usual, is our in-house solicitor, Jennifer Obaseki, senior partner at Obaseki Solicitors, joining us on the program. Jennifer, thank you for joining us on the program today.
My pleasure.
Of course, we do know that rights also come with obligation and duties. As citizens claim right, the state also require obligations, and also the state also has rights in terms of obligations they need to deliver. But however, as migrants, you want to quickly take us through some of our rights, the rights of a migrant in a community, in different sectors, in different areas.
Well, you see, there's different layers of rights, if we put it that way. Depending on your status as a migrant will determine what you're eligible and you're entitled to do. So if you have come into a country newly and you have a legitimate right to be there, you have leave to remain, then fine, you can open up a bank account, you can access medical treatment, you can get a driving license once you've passed the test. But if you do not have those, the legitimate right to be in the country, especially the UK, then there's a level of curtailment, let's say, to those particular services. So, for example, the banks, the NHS, DVLA, all basically communicate, even the school pupil registration service. So it's very important that you understand that if you're not a documented migrant or you don't have leave to remain, because all these agencies and organisations liaise with the Home Office, it may lead to further investigation about you. The other thing is, obviously, if you're an employer, you have to be fully aware of your obligations when dealing and hiring migrants, whether you're hiring them on full-time or even through agencies. It's important that you're sure that the due diligence in checking their eligibility to take up employment is being done properly. Not only must you check, but you must also reasonably record those checks, because the fine now has gone up to £20,000, and the Home Office is being very rigorous about enforcing these fines. So you can imagine if you're somebody that's in the security industry and you hire different people, or in the care industry, which is very common, and you hire workers regularly. Some of them have limited leave to remain, 2.5 years. They're good workers, you keep them on contracts, but you must have a system where you're recording when their leave to remain runs out, and that you're checking, because even when somebody's initially given 2.5 years, at some stage during that that period, the Home Office might curtail it for one reason or another. Maybe they may have a change in circumstance. So if you're hiring or firing, it's important that you are checking through the Home Office service. And the Home Office service has been criticised. because sometimes they use the word may have leave to may be eligible for employment, and you don't want may, you want is as a word. And then also in the printout, sometimes at the top it says this person has leave to remain to a certain time, but underneath in small print this person's leave has been curtailed. So criticism has come out of some of the cases. If you are in this situation where you're being investigated or you're being fined as an employer, it's important that you know that two things. One, you can appeal the level of the fine. If it's too high or you feel it's certain circumstances have not been taken into consideration, you can appeal to a county court. And because many of the county court judges are not so au fait or familiar with these things, if you actually reduce the level of the fine, you will also get your costs. So if you feel that there's been a level of unfairness, it's worth a challenge, but do get some advice about it.
Moving on, but there are ways circumstances can change and put such a person in a favorable situation.
Well, you know, the immigration journey is difficult, and at times it changes. So, for example, you may have leave to remain, open up your bank account, have your driving license, and then all of a sudden you go to extend and something happens, you're refused, you might be appealing. And ordinarily, when you're appealing a decision, your rights should remain intact. So this is where challenging the DVLA, challenging, let's say, banks, if they wrongfully freeze what you've put in your account, or the Home Office wrongfully write a letter to them, you must challenge it, because when you are appealing, what should happen is your right should remain intact. That should be your right to continue working, your right to continue holding a driving license, your right to continue legitimately receiving funds into your bank account. And if for some reason, as I say, it's challenged, you can write to the Home Office to say why you think the decision is wrong. If the bank freezes your funds that are in your account, again, you can try to appeal, make your representations, outline why it's not correct. In relation to saying in bettering your position, obviously, if you manage to be successful in any legal challenge or appeal, then you'll be able to ensure that your rights, that's your right to your bank account, your license, are restored. However, in the interim, when these mistakes are made, it usually causes just additional hardship. There are some situations where there's no mandatory obligation. For example, the pupil registration service is where the schools take the data for all students between the ages of 5 and 19. So that's any child that's in full-time education, not in nursery, but full-time, up to leaving secondary school into the lower levels of college. Now, that's an optional registration. So if you do not want the school to collate your data, you say you're opting out. And that's not mandatory. So even if you say you're opting out and the school say you must provide name, date of birth, address, etc., country of origin, you can say you're opting out. The Home Office does relate to the education boards in order to pull this information from the Pupil Information Service. And what people worry about is that data can be used by the Home Office to re-trigger investigations into families. So families who are living below the radar, maybe they have a child that they're waiting a few months to make the age of 10, or they're waiting for appeal to be concluded. They just don't want the additional stress of letters from the Home Office. So sometimes they may choose to opt out of that type of notification. And again, when you think about things like NHS, it's actually your right to register with a GP. Many GPs, I understand, closing their lists once they get letters from the Home Office about people telling them that they can no longer be a patient. That should not be happening. And if you are being wrongfully denied NHS treatment, it's important you get legal advice. You are entitled to GP generalistic practice advice. You are entitled to treatment for infectious diseases, because they don't want you, if you're just because you don't have papers, to be treated for a contagious infectious disease. That you shouldn't be left in that position. Any such treatment of that nature is a pure breach of your human rights. One would like to think that nations would operate the protection of their borders in a fair, humane manner. I honestly look at nations like Italy that are sending ships of people into their death sentence, you know, just because you don't want the migrants living on your soil, that doesn't mean you send them to die in the Mediterranean Sea. Why not land them, process them, remove them? Why send them to die? Or even ask their national embassies to pay for their departure flights. But why send them back out into the sea to die? It's just inhumane. And again, if you've landed somebody, if a nation has landed you, they should be able to give you basic medical treatment. When it comes down to people being asked to pay for NHS treatment, that is undocumented migrants that haven't processed any kind of asylum claim or any other thing that are receiving major NHS treatment. And in such situations, the NHS may levy the person a bill, especially if they've not paid the NHS charge through an application. So it means they've been underground, remained undocumented, or they've come in as what they call health tourism, you know. So you've got to really check where you fall within these series of rights that you do have being here if you are being asked to pay for something or your eligibility to something is being curtailed. Check first. Don't always just accept the status quo of what you're being told, because ordinarily you should not be denied medical treatment at all.
Let's go over some of the things you said. First, it's come to our knowledge that there are certain schools that have actually asked for people's passports, parents' passports. What is the situation? Is that legal? Can that be turned down? Can that be refused?
The student is a member of an institution.
I'm not talking about students, I'm talking about pupils now.
The National Pupil Database. Now, that database, the government compiles it so that they can know statistically, make analysis for provisions, for services, for teachers, etc. However, that database is shared with the Home Office, and that's a fact. And we say this, I say this not to push families underground, but for them to know as a fact that you have an option to opt out. It is not compulsory for you to give information about your child. The law doesn't say it's compulsory. If the organisation or the institution is putting pressure on the parent, bring your child's passport. Not every child has a passport. You ask, what for? Somebody says, go and bring X. You say, why? You can ask, what is the purpose of that? If it's for this particular reason, it's not. If it's for registration, passports are not needed for registration. It's not obligatory for people to bring their passports, and that's a fact.
So where the school insists such a person should seek
you can get the birth certificate of the child. If the birth certificate's not available, you can get a further identifying document. If you've lost birth certificates, you can go to the registry, ask for duplicates to be given to you. Normally it costs between £6 and £10. I understand such can be requested online nowadays. So you should ask the reason why. Again, if they're asking for the parents' passports, why? What's the reason behind it? Unless it's a compulsory element of their registration, then...
Can that be
when you're looking for a solicitor to deal with your case, you don't just look for any solicitor, you look for the right solicitor. An expert who knows what he's doing can deal with your case the right way, achieving the best results. Obaseki Solicitors has more than 100 years of specialist experience serving the local community in immigration law, property law, human rights legislation, civil and criminal litigation, family law, employment law, Sharia law, business law, maritime and commercial law, providing professional legal services globally in Africa, Asia and Europe. Be assured we'll be able to deal with your case the absolute right way with results. So, contact us today by phone on 020-7739-7549 or go online at www.legalpal.com.
A passport is not a document that everybody must have.
Okay.
So to say that you must produce it, no, it's not possible.
Where certain schools do know that parents are immigrants and they probably suspect that probably they are undocumented, and we see the hostile environment where the government uses every available institutions within its power to trigger and loopholes.
Make life uncomfortable for people.
Absolutely. So where a parent or parents are subjected to this ridiculous constant threat of produce your passport, produce identification, what would you advise such parents to do?
There are organisations. One of them I think is called Against Borders for Children. That's one organisation that can help. There are various different organisations, but that's one in particular. You can obviously go to the law centre to ask. You see, within one's human rights and liberty, you cannot be forced to do something that is completely unreasonable. So therefore, so far as you have an identifying document to say who you are as a parent, then that should be sufficient. But to say go and produce your status, and especially if the Home Office have your passport, it's something you can't produce. You can't make something that you don't actually have. It's not reasonable. If it's not a reasonable request, then you have to, if you can't yourself make the representations, you may have to go to an organisation that can help you do
Or better still, you can get Citizens Advice Bureau,
Yes.
or you can speak to Jennifer, Obaseki Solicitors. Get in touch with us. We'll be able to put in some representation on your behalf to resolve that. You also spoke about GPs.
Yes.
Of course, it's no longer stories or rumors that for you to register, you must produce basic documentation and including ID. The government has said people who do not have the rights to be in the UK shouldn't enjoy any public services, including NHS services, GP services. But you do say it is a fundamental right. How can that be? What should be? What should be? What should not be?
Well, you see, the fact is everyone has the right to register with a GP and receive free primary care.
But where
now, there's
the
a difference between receiving major treatment in hospital for a known condition and primary health care. There is a distinction. And if the GP is refusing to register you, unless it's because they're full up and they're refusing to give that primary care, then you can write to the local authority and they should allocate you a GP.
But you do know that for you to register with a GP, they do ask for identification, including your passport.
Now,
Utility bills.
if the GP can ask for that, but to be honest with you, again, it's not something that will preclude you from being registered and received as a patient. If that particular surgery, for some reason, has that as a policy, then it's best you find another one. But because it's very clear that it should not be happening. So dentists, opticians, and GPs, these are primary basic care. But when you see people, as I say, that have known conditions, that's where you have this borderline and there's an assessment. Even people with infectious diseases, we're talking tuberculosis, HIV, they are entitled to treatment because if they're not treated, the general public will be put at serious risk. So this is why, if you are ill, please, please do not feel too afraid to go and insist on getting health care. And if anybody precludes you, tries to stop you, please seek advice. It is inhumane for anyone to do so, and it's wrong for anyone to do so. We're finding women who are too scared to go to get prenatal treatments, and they're going late, and this can cause so much harm to yourself or to the baby.
Can we start with that? Rights of the pregnant
The right
woman.
there is a primary care. If you're not
documented.
documented, and if it was your intention to put in an application, or you for some reason you didn't have the money, something went wrong, the relationship broke down, and you're pregnant, you're too scared, you're at home. Number one, if you're destitute, you cannot be refused treatment. So if you're living from couch to couch, home to home, you're destitute. Number one, you might be able to apply for a fee waiver on your Home Office immigration fees. Number two, you can be entitled to free NHS treatment if you're destitute. So all these things are so important. It's when people don't know, they don't know. You know, if you don't know, you don't know. But if you know, please try to take action to help yourself or help another who you know would benefit from this information. Because so many people seem to be suffering adversely when they actually don't need to.
All right, let's quickly inform you that part of the developments by the Home Office to, if you're EU citizen national living in the United Kingdom, as Britain prepares to leave the EU. Part of the provisions the Home Office has put in place is creating a kind of application where people can register, and you just need to answer 2-3 questions, and then you can definitely have your status residency given to you permanently in the United Kingdom. Once you meet the basic criteria, that should be sorted out. But just quickly put that in mind. But if you do need advice, if you're EU national living in United Kingdom, or you are a dependent of EU national, you do need advice concerning your status, or even if you're married to EU national and you are now divorced and you're nearing the end of your initial 5 years stay in the United Kingdom, you're threatened or you're worried that because you're divorced now, you don't know what to do, you might want to take advice, legal advice from your solicitor, citizen advice, or better still, contact us at Obaseki Solicitors, who might be able to offer you some legal support and representation. All right, this is how far we can go on the program today. If you do need and require any advice as to what we have said today, you might want to get in touch with Obaseki Solicitors London, or you might want to speak to Jennifer ourselves on the phone number you see on the screen, or you might want to send me an email here. I will be able to respond and deal with all your queries as long as they are legal. Nothing is above the law. We can always deal with your issues and find solutions to every problem around you. Jennifer, thank you for coming on the program today.
My pleasure. Just to let people know, though, the NHS surcharge is set to increase. They have said it may go up to £120. So when you are budgeting for your
in addition to the amount that is already...
Well, so yes, it's set to double. They haven't said when, because I know we're in this hostile environment. But please, please don't be afraid to ask for help, because help is out there.
All right, my name is Tunde Alabi. This is how we can go on the program today. We look forward to seeing you again. Like we said, if you do need any advice, legal representation on any legal matter, housing, immigration, property, we are here to help you at Obaseki Solicitors. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye. Democracy gives everyone the rights of expression, a passage to a world of freedom, a world that is free, that is fair, equitable, and that is just. But indeed, how just, fair, and equitable is democracy to the people? How economically free are the people in a world of globalization? Join the discussion, have your say here, live on Ben Television on News Punch.